Recently I made a stereotypes video about the transgender community, and a very common stereotype that came up was Dungeons and Dragons, you know? And I didn't really cover it that much in that video because I wanted to save it for this video. Because it's such a big one to unpack, lovely audience. Because as you can imagine, when you transition, there is something inherently appealing about being someone else. It's just a tricky aspect of early transition, and I think that's why the game has resonated so much with people that happen to be transgender. Now, does every trans person play? Of course not. That'd be ridiculous. Did DnD fundamentally form the queer movement? Also no. It's worth saying that modern LGBT movements that we're accustomed to, they happened like 5 years prior to when D&D came out. So it's not really a massive connection in a direct sense, right? D&D didn't essentially liberate trans people the second it came out. Far from it, in fact. A lot of the stereotypes of D&D you might be more familiar with in the past was it being played only by cishet white guys. And that stereotype's changed pretty significantly. I'd say a big part of that was stuff like Critical Role and other similar D&D podcast style shows showing a very wide demographic playing this game, right? Inherently, that will make any person be like, oh, I could give that a go. I think in the last like decade-ish, roleplay games or tabletop games, whatever you want to call them, has definitely entered a bit more of a mainstream cultural zeitgeist, so to speak, if we want to be fancy. But where do trans people come in all this? Fair question, lovely audience. See, like video games, right? You might be familiar with the stereotype of trans people playing video games because you can be someone else and that kind of thing. So that's one thing, right? Being able to play as a girl in a game. Another thing is being able to roleplay as a girl, a guy, a non-binary person in an entire made-up world and just talk as them, interact with people so intimately and directly. So as a result, I think you get more attachment to your character because, well, you are putting everything into who they are. And there's a common thing when trans people, well, they make a character, they give them a nice name, they run for a campaign, get very attached. Then they realize something. They were role-playing themselves. They were like manifesting the person they wanted to be. Super normal. Very common. If anyone's watching this right now and goes, wait, I did that. It's fine. A lot of people did it. Like a lot. And you don't have to do it either. I didn't do it directly, but I kind of did it. So I'll share how my gender expression was, I guess, expressed for the game we know as Dungeons and Dragons. Now, like 99.9% of human beings, I played 5th edition, which is the newest one. Reason for that, because the rules actually are simple. A lot of the other ones are too complicated. If someone tries to tell me to play Pathfinder, no, I'm not doing that again. Respectfully, I'm not doing that again. Why is there a mechanic where you fall over and then just you have to roll something to get up or something? I don't quite remember it. I'm not a very hardcore tabletop player, as you can guess through this video. So, in high school, I did play D&D on weekends with a group that didn't go perfectly, but whose D&D group ever does, right? Yeah, that might be projecting. But regardless, early on, I got the opportunity to play the game, and the first character I ever made was like some kitsune fox girl with a samurai sword. Like, what are you gonna do, right? I'm not above it. I had a lot of fun. I played this super confident, like, cool samurai girl TM and had a great time. And then, as I'm playing, I, wanted to play a more, like, soft girl character. But I never got the opportunity to do that because I don't remember it too clearly, but one time I tried to play a healer, to be like some ooh-woo magician girl, but I don't think that campaign actually happened. I think I made the character, but I didn't get to use them. But I did something interesting. After a while of me playing generic girl characters, I'd always play a generic human that's just some random girl, and they have no specific personality qualities because they're just me. I just would play the game and be myself. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially when exploring identity. Now, I already knew I was trans at this point. However, it gives you a nice outlet. You don't really get to be affirmed as your gender so much as when your character's a girl or a guy or a non-binary person in your tabletop adventures. Everyone has to gender you correctly. So after that, because of peer pressure, I tried playing as a guy character that was completely not like me at all. I didn't have fun. I must confess, it was very not fun. Specifically, I remembered the dungeon master, which is the person that like runs the game basically and like tells you what's happening. Yeah, as that game's going, I just was realizing I didn't want to play as a guy. I just wanted to go back to being a generic soft girl. And there's nothing wrong with that. So immediately after that character unfortunately perished, I swapped them out for a cute girl that rides a deer and uses crossbows because I thought that was fun. Because like Breath of the Wild came out recently and I wanted to use a bow and arrow. However, my DM didn't let me because we were playing Curse of Strahd and apparently vampire hunters aren't allowed bows. What? That doesn't make sense, DM from high school. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't. I'm still salty about it. So that's my personal experience. Not much, right? And that's fine. I didn't have as intimate of an experience with D&D. I ran campaigns and that was fun. Like doing funny voices, swapping to like other characters and that kind of thing. It was good. But I'm not that connected to the D&D space. So I'm going to address another really interesting part of how gender intersects with Dungeons & Dragons. The group of people who don't play Dungeons & Dragons, right? They exist, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think stereotypes should enforce an expectation. It should just be a thing that encourages people to try things. If you think D&D looks fun, like, at all, just try it. And if you don't, that's fine. I don't think, memes being like, every trans person plays D&D, or that kind of thing, is really helpful when you think about it, because it kind of enforces this idea that all of us play D&D. It's just this expectation that absolutely every trans person is some hardcore tabletop role player. And that's not the case. Everyone's different, right? Trans people are just people, and I think the more we create such a strict stereotype of what a trans person is, we're just gonna cycle back to where we were before, where we used to stereotype that trans people were just really stereotypically straight women that achieved every feminine stereotype imaginable. Yeah, that was following the patriarchy. However, in this case, we've somehow created a pseudo expectation of trans people, which is a bit awkward because everyone's different. I feel like this existed as counterculture, if you think about it, which all that means is when there's like a cultural expectation and you create a new one to flip it on its head, it's like specifically going against something. And honestly, the D&D stereotype did do that. There was an image that like stereotypical nerdiness couldn't intersect with, you know, being a woman, right? And I think that stereotype has evaporated a little bit. Because I think, like, you know, especially in the 70s when this game came out, I'd imagine that women wouldn't feel particularly safe at the D&D table. And there's a lot of reasons for this. You know, most notably, sexism. But I think overall, nowadays, as a byproduct of every, like, trans person becoming involved in a hyperbolic, like, stereotypical image sense. Not actually. But because everyone, like, has an image of trans people participating in D&D very actively, a lot of game shops, which are just places you can go to play D&D, have become increasingly more accepting of trans people because all their clientele suddenly transitioned. So they kind of had to. Similar reason why Magic the Gathering and other card games are becoming a bit more inclusive. So I actually think that, especially like for cis women, I think trans women becoming really involved has actually like really benefited overall space, I think. Just simply allowing trans people to go into the space, exist, and create a safe space for diverse groups, then more diverse groups can come and play, right? So in a way, I think the counterculture of trans women in nerdier spaces, such as video games, D&D, that kind of thing, I think has like helped and assisted with cis women feeling comfortable in those spaces. So it's not like a perfect thing that's happened, because I think the stereotype's a little reductive, but I think it's done some good in some other ways. Because we have this reverse stereotype now, which I know for a lot of trans people, they're going to look up like, can I be trans if I like nerdy stuff? And they're going to see all these trans people liking nerdy stuff. They're going to feel very seen. However, we need to take this a step further. We need to make sure that trans people know they can be trans regardless of their interests. Now, I think it's a really massive step that we've made it clear that trans people can enjoy nerdy hobbies or hobbies traditionally associated with masculinity. Even though there's nothing inherently masculine about tabletop games, it's pretty gender neutral. But, you know, they find a way. Point is, I think we've managed to start the path forward, so to speak, to allow that accessibility and diversity in a lot of hobbies and fields. And trans people can feel safe being themselves. And D&D for a lot of people was how a lot of people expressed that, I think, especially early on for many. If you're like, you know, trying to rationalize telling your friends you want to live as a girl, for example, and you have to process just adjusting your mannerisms stereotypically and speaking to people you've known for a long time, that's very hard. But what's easier is role-playing a different person and then gradually get everyone used to that different person. And then you come out and then it's actually pretty smooth sailing. It's a lot easier to process living as a girl if you role-played as one, because you're putting yourselves in the shoes of someone else. And also, you can put your shoes in, well, you can put yourself in any shoe in D&D. And I think that's led to the diversity and acceptance, because a lot of people that play have walked in the shoes of so many different groups and people. And that's just a logical thing that's going to happen in a game where you be someone else. However, the most significant thing for trans people has been the ability to finally be yourself, funny enough. When you're given the opportunity to roleplay, you don't have to be who society has deemed you to be. And for many cis people, that just means that, you know, they don't have to just be themselves. But for trans people, they've been told to be someone else already. So really, a trans person spends their life role-playing as a different gender. And then it comes naturally to roleplay as a different one. And then they go, oh, wait, I kind of like this gender. D&D has just been a space where so many people are able to just be themselves, but with the kind of cloak or the barrier of pretending they're being someone else. That creates an easy atmosphere to try new things, because there's less vulnerability in it. Because the guy in front of you at the table is role-playing as like a giant orc with a giant battle axe or whatever that shoots fire or something. Just comparatively, what you're doing won't be seen as weird. Generally, you'll just be chilling. You probably will be the most stereotypical character at the table. The most unnotable, because you're just there. You're just chilling. And it won't stick out, because again, down the table over there will be some person that's like a sentient bird that can like shoot arrows or something, and then they took a point to go faster and they're Sonic or something. It doesn't matter, because nothing's weird in D&D. Like, everything's been done. So as a result, it's just a space where people felt they could be themselves. So naturally, it's become a safe haven for so many trans people, and that's so important. So the main point I want to make is we need to still foster that safe space, but not expect everyone to participate in it. However, I hope the video explained why it exists in the first place. It's been such a big space for so many people to do something they thought they couldn't. And then, you know, you roleplay as a different gender and you're like, oh, I'm kind of doing it. Gives you an opportunity to practice like social speech, voice in general, like changing the voice. Everyone's doing that at the table. You're not gonna seem comparatively strange if the guy in front of you is like trying to do an epic orc voice or whatever. It won't seem strange if you're like, oh, I'm gonna try a girl voice now. It just won't confuse anyone. It's just such a normalized space to try things. And I think that is the key to all of this. It's kind of like when people cosplay at cosplay conventions. You won't look strange because everyone's doing it, right? It becomes a new normal because normality is just defined by whatever's around you. But if you change your scenery, suddenly some things become a lot easier. So I hope this video shows the importance of these spaces existing, how it's like really paved the way for diversity, not just for trans people, but for cis people too, liking nerdier hobbies, but also that we shouldn't expect trans or queer people in general to participate or be into this kind of thing, because everyone's different. Everyone likes different stuff. I've met trans people that wouldn't touch a D&D, and I've met people that like live in D&D, right? There's such a spectrum of people, and I don't think it should be an expectation. However, I do think it should still be a thing talked about in the space and greatly encouraged, as that diversity and safe space has probably saved the lives of countless trans people, and that can't be understated. I think it's been one of the biggest influences of the big increase of publicly out trans people in the 2020s, if that's what we're going to call it. Because in the 2010s, what was getting popular? Yeah, D&D. It's connected. It's connected. Because they made the game simple and easy to play. Crazy. The point is, and that's been a lot of points, but it's a great thing. We shouldn't expect everyone to participate, but dang, it's a good thing. I'm glad it exists, and it's helped so many people. People I know personally, people I don't. All kind of people, you know? It's helped people discover they're trans, or gay, or like asexual. It's helped people discover maybe they'd like to try different interests or something, right? You can just try stuff, right? It's helped a lot of people feel seen and empowered in a fantasy setting because you can tell your own story and you don't have to deal with the fact that most mainstream media probably can't tell those stories because it's trying to reach a mainstream demographic, right? A lot of movies will star the cishet white guy. That might not be too relatable to a lot of people, but it's aiming for the majority. But when you aim for a majority, some people get left behind. And I think D&D has been a really great way for some people to tell those stories and enjoy them with friends. It's such a social experience too. So overall, it's one of the greatest things that has happened to the trans community, other than, you know, of course, you know, legislation, rights. I like rights. It's pretty cool. Trans rights. But point is, little things like that can make all the difference. And I'm always curious what will be like the next major thing for trans people. The next thing that kind of brings us together, and also the next stereotypes. Will the thigh-high sock hacker trans girl stereotype ever be like the only stereotype? No. I can't code. I tried doing HTML one time and I cried. Thing is, stereotypes change. Literally 10 years ago, I wasn't sure if trans people were even allowed to play video games because so many cis women weren't encouraged to, right? It's just how it goes. It's a scary thing. But as people have felt more encouraged to try new things, do all sorts of things, then, well, it becomes normalized. And I'm curious what becomes normalized next. I hope that one day we'll feel comfortable to do whatever we like doing and celebrating who we are as individuals. And I think that'll lead to a really happy and strong trans community. So I hope people enjoyed this video talking about Dungeons & Dragons. I know I'm not the most experienced Dungeons & Dragons player. However, I still have a deeply rooted experience in it because of how it intersected with my transition, which is the topic of the video, right? But there's all sorts of channels related to D&D. I'll place some on the screen if I remember. And just check it out if you're interested. There's like groups all over the world. There's online ones. There's always ways to play if that's something that interests you. And if not, perfectly chill. I hope you enjoyed this explanation to maybe understand what your friends are talking about. Don't worry, whenever my friends talk about Magic the Gathering, I have no idea what's going on. But I love it for them, you know? But if you want more weekly trans content, guess what? I do that every week. You can subscribe and hit the funny bell icon to see all those videos week by week. We also have a side ASMR channel where I occasionally upload cozy ASMR videos that the algorithm would want to destroy. So that's just a channel for my niche ASMR stuff so that these videos can perform better and reach a wider demographic. So, oh, and also I stream on weekends. It's pretty cool. Mostly dancing games and rhythm games, but all sorts of things. See what I'm up to. I'm a bit unpredictable. But if you enjoy this video, do all the YouTube things. And if you have a cool D&D story, especially related to your gender identity, please let me know. I try to read everything I can, and I think someone will feel really seen seeing all these stories. Until next time, stay hydrated and know that you're valid. And roll for initiative.